fixed up. I just want to say that it's really a pleasure for me to be here this morning, attending with members of the TESOL community here in Ho Chi Minh City. I've really been enjoying my first 4 months here. I also want to give a compliment to this university. I've just been so impressed. I've been working a lot with the students at the American Center who are attending the MOOC classes, and they've really been wonderful and so motivated, and I think it just speaks a lot about the education here and the education in the TESOL education here in Ho Chi Minh City as well. So today, once this gets fixed, we're going to be talking a little bit about flipping the classroom. And it's not a brand new term in the TESOL field. It's been around a little bit, but it kind of has different definitions. So I'm curious. Looks like it's coming up soon. I'm curious to know, and if you could just raise your hand, if you've heard of the term flipping the classroom. Flipping. Great. Has anybody tried this in their class? No? Okay, great. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how it evolved, how it came to be, and how maybe we can incorporate it here in Vietnam. Okay, well let me just continue on. I don't need the PowerPoint right at this moment, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about how flipping the classroom really came about, and about two teachers, John Bergman and Aaron Sams. In 2007, they were both teachers in a high school in Colorado, okay, in a rural area, and they noticed that their students, they were missing. Okay, excellent, thank you. Okay, great. All right, so basically what we're talking about is this. It's that direct instruction takes place outside of the classroom, while the practice and application stages are done inside the classroom with the teacher. Okay? So Berkman and Sams, they noticed that their students were missing a lot of class. There were a lot of problems with poverty in the area, and parents weren't getting their kids to class. So they said, okay, what can we do? What can we do to fix this problem? So they all started to record their lectures. They recorded their lectures and they posted them online for their students, so that if they missed class, then they would have access to the lecture that was there. But they found that that really wasn't working either, because turns out about 20 or 30% of their class didn't have access to the internet. So they said, okay, we have to scratch that, let's try again. So then they bought all of their students a flash drive, and they put all of their loaded lectures on the flash drive, gave it to the students, and they said, we want you to do this at home and come to class prepared with questions. Prepared with questions and ready to work. And they had a lot of success. The students said, we actually had time to read and reread the material. When we didn't understand, we just listened to it again. And they came prepared, and they spent a lot of the time in the classroom actually working, actually producing something. And when they left, they had a finished product. Okay? And they've written a book actually on flipping the classroom, and they have a flipped learning network online that you can check out if you're interested. And so the idea is that you're basically flipping the taxonomy, okay? This popular educational Bloom's taxonomy that I'm sure you've all seen before is, just as I mentioned, now classroom, the focus, the big chunk of time is spent on these top 3 skills that are really the most useful for students, right? Sometimes we spend a lot of time explaining, and then we feel like it's just been us in front of the classroom talking, and we run out of time. We run out of time to actually do the production. So their idea was that if we flip this, we can keep the majority of the time on create, and then outside the classroom, they can do these. So, a lot of people have asked, well, when can we use this? How do we know how to start? How do we incorporate this into our work? So there's been a lot of research on this, and Wiley and Gardner, they gave a really great presentation about flipping the classroom without flipping out. And their idea was use it when it's something that's difficult. When you know your students will probably have trouble with something, use this. Use this when it's key knowledge points, okay? Something that they can read a lot about at home. Something that's already out there, where there's already videos developed, where there's already information you can easily post for them to see. Also, you could use it on boring topics, right? So I think we've all been in the classroom where we're standing up in front of everyone talking about something, and all of our students look like, but we feel like we have to explain the information, we have to teach them, we have to tell them. If they don't know this, how can they produce, right? Well, this is another way. Here's a new strategy. Okay, try to give them the boring stuff to read at home. So then when they come to class, you don't have to tell it to them. Okay, and it's about an authentic approach. Okay, that they are doing this at home, and in class, their interaction is production. Okay, it's with you, and they're producing something. So, I want to look a little bit more in detail about this. And Marshall had a good visual for how to look at this. So they said it should start, the at-home work should be about instructional videos. And they would do this, they would watch these, listen to these as many times as they needed to. And then, in class, they would collaborate with their peers, produce something, do authentic activities, and then you and the other students would observe, provide feedback, and give an assessment. Because if they are doing all the pre-learning activities outside of class, you have time to do this inside. And that's really what Bergman and Sams were looking for in the first place, is if their students weren't in class very often, how could they assess them? How would they have time to do all of this? So they just flipped their idea. And now, when you see instructional videos, a lot of people see that and they get a little panicked. Like, I don't have instructional videos. It's going to be a lot of time for me to look up this. How do I know about these specific topics? It does sound a little daunting. And I won't lie to you, when I first was thinking to try out this, where will I find all these videos? But never fear. There's a lot of already made resources for you at your fingertips. Okay? It doesn't have to be a lecture that's recorded. It doesn't have to be you talking on the lecture. There are a lot of the traditional ones used for flipped classrooms. You can find YouTube videos. The Purdue OWL website. Does everybody know about this website? Yes? Okay. Excellent writing resource, but they have a lot of other resources there as well, but especially for writing. This is my favorite one. TED Ed, great videos at different levels. And Sailor.org has also a lot of really great recorded classes and online lectures. Okay, so the idea was that you could take one from this, your students would watch it, and you would come in and do the activity together. So, in detail, for a little more example, and I will be happy to give anybody this PowerPoint who wants it. So if you feel like you're scrambling to write, don't worry. I'm happy to pass this to you. So for example, these were a few that I've used before from YouTube. Okay. Think about the thesis statement. Something that we're always trying to teach our students. Something that we teach and reteach every year. I feel like I'm always talking about the thesis statement, okay? But it's not that exciting, right? I mean, when I say we're going to talk about thesis statements, my students aren't, yay! Okay, it's usually something they know that must be done, they must learn. So we were looking for a way to make this a little different. So a colleague of mine and I, we tried out this. We gave them the videos, Writing Ninjas, okay, something different for them to read. And then they came to class and we wrote in class. And we had a lot of success with this. And not just success in that they wrote well, but that they enjoyed the class. When we asked them for feedback, we got really positive feedback from the students in that class. So we had the How to Write a Killer Thesis, Writing Ninjas, Write a Strong Thesis Statement, and also finding credible resources for your paper, okay, credible sources. This is a big one because it's hard to teach in class. It takes discovery. You want students to go and compare and contrast in their brain. Is this good? Evaluate, right? So if we don't have time to do that in class, but if you're flipping it and they're doing the investigation at home, then they've already got a clear idea of what you mean and they're ready to go in the class. So Purdue OWL also has these vidcasts. I don't know if you have used them before. They're also available on YouTube. Okay, the vidcasts are available on YouTube. They're really great. They have cultural videos as well about applying your work to a specific type of audience. The 90-second semicolon, they have some English in 90 seconds videos that are really fun. And then other writing activities like summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting. There's also been a lot of research with success on these topics in flipped classrooms. It's things that take a long time sometimes for our students to understand. And people said that when they gave their class, maybe 50% of the students understood immediately how to paraphrase, how to summarize, they got it. But then 50% of the students were still really confused when they left. Really confused. So they flipped the classroom, gave all of this work to do at home, and they said when the students came in, they were still a little confused. Even after doing their own research at home, their own investigation. But the beauty of it was they had time to clarify because everything was practice when they got in the classroom. So it was easy to clear up the confused points. Okay. So there's been a lot of success with writing in these. The TED Ed, we have the punishable perils of plagiarism. This is a great great one that is used that I've seen in a flipped classroom. Great response to that one. And then Sailor has wonderful videos and lectures about proofreading and revising, which is another topic, a big one that takes time. That takes a little too much time to review in class. So these are some that are out there. We have the term, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, okay? Don't do it. If it's already there for you, then great, use that. It's less work for teachers and it's great for students to hear different voices, see different people, right? But you could also do it yourself, okay? You also have options. Just like Bergman and Sam's, they recorded their own lectures, okay? It was strictly audio. But with Powercasting, you can add narration, okay, to this as your lecture. You could record that and give it to your students. There's also this Digo site. It's for screenshot and annotation. Okay, so it's also about you doing it yourself that you can add to your lecture. Screen is record, video, and voice. And you can Google all of these. They will come up quickly. I don't have the websites on here because they're quite long. A lot of them have a lot of strange characters. But all of these, and then Jing is the last one, and it's also screenshot and video. These are all platforms for you to record your own lectures, or not even a whole lecture, okay? Just parts that you want your students to do at home, okay? And these are all based on audio and video, okay? Audio and video. Because the main idea of this flipping was that it would be instructional videos. Instructional videos. But that's not the only way that you can do it. A lot of teachers said, well, I think I've actually been flipping the classroom. When I gave this presentation before, and I asked at the beginning, how many people have flipped a classroom? And no one raised their hand. But then when I got to this slide, they said, oh wait, I think actually I've done this before. So this is probably something that you have done, but maybe there wasn't a fancy or trendy term at the moment, hadn't been coined. It doesn't have to be instructional videos. Okay? That's not the only way that you can go about flipping the classroom. Okay? You have a lot of options. A lot of people just take basic grammar information, put it online, print it out, give it to students, and they say, you take this home, you read it, come to class ready to produce. Reading and noticing. Reading has been a big one, okay, a big one. A lot of ESL reading classes have flipped. They are now, students are going home with the material, reading outside of class, and coming in to do something, either to produce, if it's an integrated skills course, a lot of production work, or writing, or something else with that material. Okay, there's been a lot of research on this. It's really interesting that teachers said, why haven't we been doing this? We can't read all of this in class. It takes forever. It's great to read out loud sometimes and hear your students reading, but it's not just a class about reading, right? What are we doing with the reading? What skills are we trying to learn? So with a flipped class, the reading is done at home, and then a production activity, however you want to frame it, is done in the class. And a lot of these have been done also with IELTS and TOEFL studying courses, that students go home and read the materials, and then they come back and practice the skimming, the scanning, the noticing, the picking out the main ideas, is that they've already read it. They already have an idea about it. So the focus when you come back into class is on the test-taking skill. The test-taking skill. There's been a lot of success with this. Really great. So, you're thinking about flipping. You say, okay, I'm going to collect all of these videos. I'm going to record all of these lectures. I'm going to scan all of these copies of things I want my students to read. I'm going to make a folder. I'm going to collect all of this material. How, then, do you get it to your students? Okay. So this is another thing that we have to think about when we're flipping is we have all these materials, so how do we organize them? Where do we put them? How can we keep them, right? Because we want to recycle these. We try it out, we see what works, we update, we're modifying, but we need a place to store them. And we need a place for our students to access them. Okay? So there are many ways to do this. Okay? These are just a few. Just as in the beginning, in 2008, Bergman and Sams, they did everything on USB. No internet. Okay? No internet. And this really depends on where you teach, right? Because before I came here, I was living and teaching for 3 years in Nicaragua, Central America. And when I talked about flipping the classroom, the teacher said, this will never work. There are 2 places in this whole town that have internet. And it doesn't work half the time. And the electricity goes out all the time. So how? They said, Caroline, this is not a technologically advanced, this is not the United States. No, we can't do that. I said, wait. Everybody here has a USB. And I asked my students, how many of you have a USB? You bet. All of them had a USB full of music. Full of music, right? They were all sharing music. Okay, so I said, okay, I'm going to give you this. We worked with the local internet cafes, and they let our students come in for an hour for free, and it worked great. They were able to use the materials even though they didn't have regular access to internet, and they didn't have regular access even to a computer. There were computers in the town. They could go in, they could use them, and it worked. But we also have, depending on where you work, depending on where you live, systems like this. The Moodle system, the M-learning systems. You can upload your materials if your university has access to that. I'm very lucky that we have access to this where I work currently. It's a great place to store all your work. Your students are connected to that system. It's easy for them to access anything that you post. I can post videos, I can post links, I can post PowerPoints. It's an excellent way for your students to have access. But you also have Google Drive. Okay, you have a lot of storage options in the Google Drive. You can have your students in a class on the Google Drive where they can access all of the material that you post, and it's easy to store it. This is a good place you could store large videos. If you record a lot of lectures, you have a lot of space on the Google Drive. It's a good place for that. Now this one is an interesting topic because there's a lot of discussion about whether or not social media should be used in the classroom, whether or not that should be our platform for contacting our students. But we all know it has its disadvantages and advantages. But if it's the only option for you to contact your students and you know that they will respond or they will click on something that you post on social media, It's a way. We have to adapt, right? Because teaching's not the same as it was 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. It's changing so much. When I came here to Vietnam, I emailed all my students. I said, hello, welcome to my class. Here's what we're going to do on the first week. Please read this. And I got about 15 bounced emails back that said, this is no longer an address. This address doesn't exist. And then I got some other people who emailed me and said, oh, teacher, I'm sorry. My friend, she never checks her email account. I don't think she'll look at it. She can't remember the password. I said, uh-oh. I gotta find another way. So I created an English language fellow, an English teacher Facebook page for myself. No problems at all. Everyone checks it. My students are quick to respond. It's separate from my personal account. And it's a great platform. I've had a lot of success with students accessing materials. I can post links from the Moodle, from the Google Drive, all on that. And let me tell you, it's more likely that my students will check their Facebook than check the e-learning system or their email. So for convenience sake, that might be one option. Okay, so as all things, there are benefits and there are challenges to this. Okay? There are benefits and there are challenges. And it's not just benefits for students and challenges for students. It's also for us as teachers, right? There are benefits for us, but to start this can be incredibly challenging for someone who's never done it. So, challenges. The biggest one is unfamiliarity. Okay, your students, they said, we're not teachers. We don't know this. You've never taught us this. How can we come to class prepared to produce, to do an activity, to do a project, to collaborate, if you haven't taught this to us? How can we do that? Because our students aren't comfortable with that ambiguous learning style. Okay, many students aren't. And some feel like it's too much work. They say, oh, but I already have to do so much in class, and now you're telling me I have to go home and read and read and read and watch a million videos? These two. A good way to approach this is to start small. Okay? You're not going to want to always have a completely flipped classroom where you're never ever lecturing. Okay? Start small. Pick one boring topic, or pick one that you think will really interest your students, that they can do well, and try it out. See how they respond. Adapt to their needs. Okay? The biggest thing is to start small. Show them how to do it. Show them what you want. Give them your expectations. That's the biggest thing. If they feel like they're prepared to do it, they know exactly what you want, then it's a little less unfamiliar to them. Try it. Show it in class. Show them exactly what you want. Give it a try. And then another one is, in general, access to resources. Okay? Some things you will find easily, all over YouTube, anywhere you can find a lot of videos easily. But it depends on your class, right? Some of us don't just teach basic speaking, basic language skill courses, right? How do we adapt this for really advanced classes, and how do we adapt this for young students? Okay, and there's not always materials for that. So it will take initiative of the teacher to develop those. Okay, and that's where it becomes more work for us. But remember, these are recyclable, right? We're not throwing them away. We can use them again in the next semester. We can adapt them, we can modify them. We don't have to recreate. But the initial job of developing them will be on the teacher. That will be something for you to do. But I'm going to try to convince you that the benefits are much more than the challenges. So, one of the biggest parts of this, the biggest feedback from students, is that they felt like they weren't bored in class. They said, well, usually the first 30 minutes I'm texting my friend or I'm drawing pictures on the paper because my teacher's standing up there in front of me, maybe much like I am now, blah, 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 blah. Okay? A lot of students lost attention, they weren't engaged. But they said with this, it changed the whole dynamic of the classroom. It wasn't your typical come in, sit down, listen to the lecture, and then do an activity. From the time they started, their activity was already going in class. As the bell rang, they started the activity. And any questions that they had that appeared along the way were of course addressed by the teacher, but there was no lecture. The traditional idea of a lecture was completely changed. This one is a big one also. It allows more time for assessment. Okay? If you have a huge class, as many of us do, we have big classes. If you need your students to speak, and you need to listen to everyone, well, it's going to be hard to listen to 50 plus people give a speech, give a role play in one small class time, and it's also impossible to listen and give feedback, right? Because sometimes we're just listening and scribbling down their grade. Okay, next person, next group, next group. But we don't get a chance to share the feedback. And that's the most important thing, right? For students to hear what you have to say and for other students to give feedback to their peers. What they understood, what they didn't understand. And this really allows more time for that. This one is really fascinating. So a colleague of mine did some action research in Thailand with flipped classrooms. And her teachers were so keen about this because they said that it made them more confident as teachers. They said, we don't have great English skills. They said, we know we need to work a lot on our English. They said, we know. They said, we're good. We can tell when our students are making errors or are making mistakes. But sometimes when we get up in front of the class, we're very nervous. And when we have to lecture and we get stuck on something, we switch back to Thai. When it becomes something difficult that we don't really know how to explain, we switch back to Thai and explain it because if not, it just takes too much time for us to try it out. But they said on a lot of difficult topics where they had trouble explaining, they easily found videos. They easily found videos about writing, about topics, pressure topics in speaking, like complaining or apologizing, or giving suggestions or giving advice. Things that they felt uncomfortable lecturing on or didn't have enough background knowledge on, they were able to find videos. And they said that it really boosted their confidence. Because their students were learning from an outside source that they felt was very good. And then when they came to the class, they could all produce together, but they didn't have that nervousness of lecturing on something that was complicated. So they had a lot of success with this in that they built the confidence of their in-country teachers, for ESL teachers. And this one, of course, is my favorite. It humanizes the classroom. Okay? It builds a bridge to what is sometimes you are the superior, you know all, you are the lecturer. I am your student. It builds a bridge between that, right? You're still being the teacher, you're still providing them with the material, and you're still telling them what they will do. But in the classroom, you're interacting with them. It's not just you in the front lecturing and lecturing. It really gives you a chance to interact and see what they know and learn a lot more about their interests. For me, I've been able to learn a lot more about my students using a flipped classroom, just because I have more time to talk to them. It's less time for me organizing my lecture to present, and I get to spend more time just talking to them in general. And the last one that we're always trying to do, our goal as teachers, is to give our students self-autonomy. To take what we give them in class, to go home, to develop it, to elaborate on it, to become better learners on their own. They won't be with us forever, right? We can't keep them in our bubble of a classroom forever. They have to step out into the world, and it's not a script anymore. They're going to be on their own. So this is preparing them to keep learning even when they're not in the classroom. Okay? Because your learning doesn't stop when you graduate from college, especially language learning. Language is changing constantly. Okay? It's so dynamic. So you don't just stop when you finish your class. So this encourages your students to be a little more autonomous, okay? To discover on their own, to become their own teacher, which is hopefully what you have given to them when they leave your classroom. They have these skills and these abilities. Okay? So, I think that from any country I've ever taught in, Vietnam, more than anywhere, is an excellent place to do some action research regarding the flipped classroom. How many of your students have access to internet? All of mine do, right? How many of your students have a computer? Most? Some say all, some say most. How many of your students have a smartphone? Woo, so many smartphones. How many of your students have a tablet? How many of your students have all of those? Most of mine have all of those. They have more technology than I've ever even imagined. And they're teaching me new things about my technology all the time. Teacher, no, don't click on that, click on this. No, teacher, turn your phone like this. No, no, no. It's amazing, right? They have so much access to internet and technology. Okay, this is the perfect place for a flipped classroom. Okay, I think it can have incredible results with this, right? And of course, we remember to start small. It's going to be something that our students are a little uncomfortable with. But this is a place where it can really work. And that's why I love giving this presentation in Vietnam. Because people don't doubt me. When I go some places and I tell them about this, they're like, oh, no internet, no computers, no. Not in Vietnam. Not in Vietnam. That's why it's so exciting. So these are my references for some of the books and the resources that I showed you today in the presentation. Again, like I said, you're welcome to this. And I don't know how much time I have. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or if not, I am happy to answer them after the next presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
There's any question that you have for Mr. Caroline Nabors? No? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nabors, for your very informative presentation on how to flip the classroom. Your sharing and knowledge was fascinating. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Dung, the President of Portugal City TESOL Association, to have a flower. Please accept this gift as a token of appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I always feel like a superstar when I go to speak in Vietnam. It's really so humbling and wonderful. Thank you so much.